YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, back on Total War Rome 2. We're going to do another faction focus, and tonight it's going to be the Lusitani. Definitely a fun faction, and quite Javelin heavy at that, so it's obviously going to be one thing we'll cover. But let's take a look at the Lusitani and some of their different units, and actually this will be fun. Let's do the same thing we did with some of the other factions, and I'll grab one of each of their melee infantry, and we'll grab their spear infantry too, just to kind of show off. Well, you know what? They don't have that many units, so let's just hit the town here with a little bit of everything. So we'll just go ahead and swap the computer over to being the defender here, and give them a couple units, and we'll just get things started. So Lusitani as a faction, or a sword-focused faction, but they have a couple of key features that you need to be very aware of if you want to use them successfully. One, they are a charge-based faction. They need good charges in order to be effective in combat. Two, they have a lot of javelins at their availability and lots of units that can hurl precursor javelins, and some are very useful. Three, the armor of almost all Lusitani units is low in comparison to other factions, and their missile block chance is poor. So their weakness is going to be getting kited by missiles, especially if you're in the late game with depleted units. However, their units come with high attack, and they actually have some pretty good mid-tier swords. What they do lack is shield wall on any of their units that I'm aware of, so that's going to be a problem. Now, two of their units are guerrilla deployable, and that's the units that we're seeing here. Let's just go ahead and take a look at them to start off with. We got Lusitani guerrillas, which are a cheap spear unit that can deploy guerrilla. Obviously, you pay a little bit for the fact that they can deploy anywhere. They're not particularly strong, but they do have precursor javelins, which is cool because you can deploy a unit that actually can defend itself a little bit versus cavalry or elephants or something else of that sort. So you can actually deploy spears with guerrilla warriors, which are the swords, all in the same unit, which is pretty cool. And all Lusitani units, or at least most of them, have this loose formation, so you can spread out to try and minimize missile damage. If you look at these guerrillas, though, again, they're going to have the same problem that all Lusitani units do. And guerrillas are even worse. They've got almost no armor, and if you look at their melee defense, most of it is probably coming, a good chunk of it's coming from a shield, but that doesn't mean that they have a good block chance. So just keep that in mind. Very nice bonus. Well, I say that. Pretty good bonus versus large here. Not really a charge bonus on them, though, of course, which is unfortunate. They need just about all they can get, but for 400, they're pretty cheap, and they can deal with certain units. Now, guerrilla warriors are going to be similar, except they have swords, and they actually have pretty strong attack and weapon damage stats. Very nice melee defense, but again, no armor. There is no bonus versus infantry, so they're not meant to be a shock unit per se, but they do come with a very sturdy charge. In a charge, though, don't expect them to just plow over enemy units because of their charge. If we look here and mouse over, they are medium melee infantry, so they're quite light. So when charging into very heavy infantry, they may not have a huge impact. But let's go ahead and just start the battle so we can see the different units. So let's kind of go from there, and we'll just work our way through. So Lusitani nobles are your only option for the general, which means that you're quite limited in the way that you can pick your general. A Lusitani noble, though, is going to be very powerful in melee combat versus many units. Not particularly good against cavalry, obviously, but you can see that their small shields, again, going to make them somewhat vulnerable to missiles. These guys are not without armor, but their armor is considerably lower than other high-tier melee swords, so about 40 less armor than you'd see on a Roman unit, and considerably less still, like I think about 30 less than you'd see on, say, like an Oathsworn, maybe 35. So a capable unit with 64 melee attack, solid weapon damage, not the best, but good, and they also have headhunt. The base health and morale is pretty good, but again, it's this armor that's going to hurt them. Very good melee defense, but again, armor. 32 charge bonus is also pretty respectable. So let's move along. Cantabrian Cav. These guys are Javelin Cav, of course, and this is actually where the name Cantabrian Circle comes from. Was from this tribe. Very cool looking units. Not really my favorite missile cav, though, because their melee attack is very lacking. Their health and stuff is okay-ish, and they have elite missile damage. The elite missile damage could prove worth its value if you're able to take out high value sword targets. or not sword targets, cav targets. And you also get the fact that this unit looks very cool. I mean, tell me those guys don't look pretty awesome, because they do. Anyway, but yeah, that's going to be their advantages and disadvantages. We'll go back and look at prices, of course, on everything here in a moment. We'll just keep moving on down. So Iberian Cav, these guys here, some of my favorite light scout cav in the game, because they come with a very nice attack. They are very low armor, but they're also quite quick. They're not meant to be used against other cavalry because they're sword armed, but they are quite good at mopping up skirmishers and other low armor units that are going to be found. But this 50 melee attack that they have and 39 weapon damage is very good for any cavalry unit. But don't be deceived by it, thinking, oh, I can throw these guys into a cav fight or a long-term infantry fight. No, you can't. The melee defense for these guys is decent, but they lack armor pretty much altogether, and their health and base morale is none too good. They do throw javelins before they enter combat, which can be handy as well. And they have a fire at will button and the frenzied charge, so a couple of useful traits for sure. I really like Iberian Cav, though their use is going to be limited. Again, though, a fun unit in campaign for sure, where you can get them leveled up. In multiplayer, use them for attacking enemy skirmishers and the such. So definitely a cool unit. Scutari Cav is one that you're going to have seen with Carthage and other factions. And these guys are pretty sweet looking too. So the Scutari Cav are going to be a medium melee Cav. And they're going to have a very nice bonus versus large. They're one of the units that has 15 bonus versus large. So if you can get these guys into a cav fight without them being charged, they are actually quite capable in a cavalry fight at 42 attack with a 15 bonus. And they even have a good charge bonus, really, and decent melee defense. But again, they're medium cavalry, and they don't like being charged by heavier cav. So it's just something to be aware of and to keep in mind. Now, they will do good amongst other medium cav, that's for sure. And they're okay for the price. They're okay. You just have to make sure that you use them properly. I like Celt Iberian Cav. It seems like just a little bit better. But Scutari Cav's not bad. Balearic Slingers, definitely a cool unit to be able to offer to the Lusitani. And they can bring as many of them as they like, which means that the Lusitani actually can bring some pretty serious skirmishing power. At long range, Balearic Slingers are second only to probably Rhodians. As far as their capabilities, they are very powerful slingers. Rapid reload, one of the abilities they have, and these guys can do some excellent work with lots of ammo and very respectable damage. And armor piercing is what's going to be useful for slingers. It's higher. So, very nice unit indeed. Iberian Skirmishers. Let's check these guys out. So, very snazzy outfits here for the guys with the red stripes. They look like they're a football team or something, really. So, in any case, yeah, a decent javelin unit for being cheap, but not really. I would have liked to have seen these guys maybe have elite missile damage, kind of like the cavalry. And maybe just call them Cantabrian skirmishers or something like that. It would have been cool to give the Lusitani another unique unit here that has a lot of missile damage. So kind of sad that they're a little bit lame, but I don't know, they're pretty fun still. Iberian Slingers, they are going to be a nice cheap slinger. They have very low damage, but of course if you're just looking for range, they have that. They're not going to cause near as much damage as a Balearic Slinger. But again, if you just need a cheap unit to provide some long-range cover, these are going to be a good go-to unit. Guerrilla Warriors we mentioned, and I think the Guerrillas we mentioned also. So Iberian Swords, these guys are a useful unit, and I'll explain why here. Let's pull them up where you can see them. Now, I don't think that it makes any difference in their damage or anything, but if you look, these guys are carrying a solid steel javelin. This is known as a Soliferum, and it's very cool. And the idea behind a Soliferum is not all that different than a Roman Pilla. In fact, the Romans probably got part of that idea from these particular tribes, or the Iberians in general. So yeah, the Romans actually got the Gladius, which is a Spanish short sword, from the Iberians, and the Pila came from there as well. So and I believe the Scutum shield idea was picked up. So the Romans obviously like what some of these guys are armed with. And again, this Soliferum javelin looks really nice. I don't know that it creates any more damage or anything else like that. I haven't looked into the stats, but this is a 120-man sword unit that has pretty decent weapon or melee attack and weapon damage. Obviously going to be low armor, low morale, all that kind of stuff. But they have 5 javelins at their disposal, and with 120 men times 5 javelins, That's a lot of damage that these guys can cause. It's a serious amount of damage. And the Iberian swordsmen are extremely useful units because they kind of act like a peltist, except that they have, you know, obviously the missiles that come off of these melee units are not quite as good as the missiles that come off of peltist, but there's far more missiles coming out of these units, and they can go into a secondary melee type mode. So really like Iberian swordsmen. They are extremely handy versus elephants. They are extremely handy at supporting cav fights because they can hurl javelins and baiting charges from cavalry and then throwing their javelins. They can throw javelins over a line into enemy skirmishers. They can throw javelins into the back of enemy infantry units that are engaged. They are very handy units, and used properly can really assist your army a great deal. We talked about Lusitani guerrillas. Lusitani spearmen. These are pretty solid spearmen. Did I forget to get a Scutari spearmen? I think I did. Or no, here they are. Okay, Lusitani spearmen are the highest tier spearmen that you can get. And they probably have more armor than any other Lusitani unit, but it's still only 55. They have nice shields as well, so they're going to have some of the best armor and missile block chances probably for all the Lusitani units, but again, it's not going to be great compared to other factions. But at 32 melee attack, 29 damage, 20 bonus versus large, a 25 charge bonus. They do have javelins, they have cavalry counter tactics, they have shield screen. This is a serious spear unit for all intents and purposes. Probably not as tanky as, say, like a chosen spearman or something like that, but definitely a powerful spear unit and definitely the best that the Lusitani have to offer. Again, a very handy unit in campaign. If you're looking, though, for multiplayer, it may be harder to justify the cost of these guys, but again, they are very capable against enemy cavalry, especially because of their javelins combined with cavalry counter tactics. Definitely a scary unit for cavalry to have to stay engaged with. Now, as part of the Daughters of Mars pack, you got these Lusitani sword women, and they actually have some pretty nice stats for the price. If you look, though, they only have a 10 charge bonus, so this is not a unit that you would want to get charged because they would get beaten down pretty hard with no armor. Their health is also pretty poor, so apparently these women are not taking care of themselves very well, and they only live once. In any case, they are apparently hopping at the idea to get into combat here. A fun unit indeed, again, useful in campaign and also in multiplayer. If you're just looking for some extra sword strength, for the price, you get quite a bit of power here. They're fairly flimsy from a defensive standpoint, but used for flanking or reinforcing, they can be a pretty handy unit, but you do have to have the Daughters of Mars pack in order to use them. Scutari Spearmen, nice sturdy spear unit. They are 500 talents, which is quite a bit of price, but again, it's a sturdy spear unit with loose spacing available because it's a Lusitani unit. They have javelins with fire at will, of course, cavalry counter tactics, and shield screen. So still, again, another handy spear unit at a little bit lower cost than the Lusitani spear. Actually, these guys have the best armor. They sure enough do. They have better armor than the Lusitani spearmen. Ha! Interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, obviously the spear stats are a little better on the Lusitani spearmen. So, interesting to know. Veteran shield warriors. These guys are going to be the backbone of any good Lusitani sword army. Let's take a look at them. Very cool units. They're like a hopped-up Iberian sword, and I really like these guys. In some ways, I'm kind of sad that they're not available to, like, more Iberian units and Gallic units aren't available to Carthage. I know Carthage has a pretty decent roster, but to me, they should have even more. In fact, I kind of think Carthage should have one of the biggest rosters in the game. Well, number one, because I like them and Carthage is awesome, but number two, because Carthage really did have access to a huge variety of troops because they use mercenaries. And I really wish that more of these units of this sort may be available to Carthage. I mean, like, that'd make Carthage too strong. It very well might, I get it. But at the same time, it'd be cool because I know Hannibal made use of different varieties of Iberian swords and different Iberian units, as well as Gallic units and others. So definitely a good unit. These guys have a very, very nice melee attack for the price. They're a 700 talent unit. Solid weapon damage, nice charge bonus, good melee defense, of course, very low armor and shield block chance because they're Lusitani, and decent health, and a pretty solid base morale. They do not have access to shield wall, you'll notice, though, which is one of the main reasons why they suffer in combat against other barbarian factions right now. So along with all Lusitani units, just don't get your guys shot up by missiles. That's going to be your biggest worry. So anyway, that gives you a little bit of a look at their units, and then just price-wise, we'll just take a look here. So again, Lusitani Swordwomen for only 360 talents. That is a pretty decent wallop worth of sword. Again, be careful how you use them because they are somewhat flimsy when being charged by cavalry or other heavier infantry. Iberian Sword, again, great unit. Guerrilla Swords, you can see their price. It's actually pretty high. I wish the price on these guys was a little lower, and then it would make it more tempting because it is so risky to bring them because they're already vulnerable to missiles from being Lusitani, and then even more vulnerable to missiles and cavalry because they are guerrilla units. Veteran Shield Warriors and of course Lusitani Nobles, as you can see their price there. Here's the prices of the spear units. Nothing real cheap for the Lusitani from the spear front, but all of these units particularly useful in their own regard, I think. Here's the cost of their slingers, only 280 for the Iberian, 560 of course for the Balearics. And of course the Iberian skirmishers are pretty cheap, not bad I guess for the cost, but I still think it would have been cooler if these guys were more like just dismounted Cantabrian Cav. But Iberian Cav of course at 500 and Scutari at 680, and then you get your Cantabrian Cav at 500. Again, not an unusable unit, but just be careful because they are pretty expensive and they are terrible in melee and don't have of course good shields or any armor whatsoever. So Lusitani, focus on your swords. Sometimes you can skirmish with them too, though, because of how many Balearic Slingers you can bring. They do have Jav Cav, and it can be of use to them, but you'll want to beware of missile-heavy factions with the Lusitani. Let's go check out a replay and see how I use them. There was a while when the Lusitani, everybody kind of felt like they were the best counter to Rome. That's no longer the case, but here we go. So I played against Carthage, which is a fun match for the Lusitani, and actually somewhat historical. The Carthaginian player brings the Mercenary Campanian Cav here, probably thinking they would do good against a lot of Lusitani swords, and I guess they could if they get into the right scenario. So let's take a look at what I did. I actually came pretty missile heavy. I brought 4 Balearic Slingers knowing that Carthage could only really... They could bring, like, say, 3 Balearic Slingers and 1 Cretan Archer, or 3 Cretan Archers and 1 Balearic Slinger. So technically Carthage can match me, but the fact that I can bring 4 Balearic Slingers, and Balearic Slingers are cheaper than Cretan Archers, means that, you know, I'm expecting to out-skirmish the Carthaginian at this point, and I have them spread very thin across the front to try and make it harder for my opponent to kill them. Also spread very thin, my Iberian Swords, and they are backing up my, my Balearic Slingers. These are a very weak target to cavalry, but I'm using it to be deceptively tempting. If they come charging in towards my Balearics and get hit with javelins from the Iberians, then it's going to be cost ineffective for the Carthaginian, and my Iberians are not far behind my mainline infantry who can also throw a lot of javelins. So I'm going in several rows here that are close enough to each other for javelin support so that my opponent will pay dearly for any cavalry charge that comes in. I've got 2 Lusitani guerrillas on my flanks. My main line, of course, is veteran shield warriors and a Lusitani noble, with 4 Iberian swords and 4 Scutari Cav. Carthage will have a hard time matching 4 Scutari Cav because they can only bring 3 of their own, and Carthaginian Cav are not quite as good as Scutari Cav. It doesn't seem like, though I do believe they're a little cheaper. The Carthaginian player, let's check out what he's brought here. So we've got a Libyan, Mercenary Samnite, this is the only real scare for me here, is this Mercenary Noble Fighter. I'd like to get this guy matched up against my Lusitani Noble, if at all possible, because my Lusitani Noble should be able to take him down, but I'm going to want to engage this unit properly, as it could be dangerous to me. Mercenary Samnite Warrior is not a big concern for me, since they don't have shield wall. The Libyan infantry are actually a little more of a concern for me, in case they use shield wall against me. But on the charge, I feel confident that my veteran shield warriors can handle them. My opponent's pulling up 2 Mercenary Scutari Cav to come after my Slingers, and this is actually what I wanted, and I am going to let him come up and potentially eat javelins. He actually comes close enough to almost bait javelins out of my Iberian Swordsman, which would have been a very MLG move there for him, to say it like Maximus would. So yeah, in any case, gonna keep my Slingers a little closer to my Swordsman so that he's not gonna want to stray in on a charge. And then let's take a look at my opponent's skirmishers. 2 Mercenary Cretan Archers, definitely capable of causing damage, and he gets them up and starts getting shots. And he's also going to have his overshots hit my Iberian Swords, which is going to be bad. So that's the one problem with me being kind of close together, so I do go ahead and space out my men a little. And I start firing targeted fire into his Cretan Archers, and it's going to do a lot of damage. My opponent's going to try and chase my Slingers back. He could just charge through here, but I am willing to let him trade his cavalry early, which I don't think would be a good plan. And here, see what happened? My Iberian swords throw javelins, my main line throw javelins, and immediately he loses 20 Scutari cav. And this one's going to go down almost 20 men as well. So yes, he's going to kill Iberian swords. They're very weak to cav charges, but is this worth it? You really want to trade cav units for killing a little bit of an Iberian sword and causing minimal damage to my Balearic slingers in the process. Now watch this next move here. My opponent pulls his archers up, and I think he's firing at my slingers, but he's not. He's targeting my general, and this is a very smart move. The Lusitani nobles will die very quickly to Cretan archer fire, and the thing that sucks for me now is I never should have come into range, because now I'm going to have to turn the back of my Lusitani noble and retreat, which is also very bad. So this is just bad on my part. I've lost a noble already, and then having to turn my back is just super bad. So there goes another, and I've also taken hit point damage now on this unit, so bad for me, but it does allow me to get back within range of his Cretans without being fired on with my Balearics, and I'm going to continue to cause a great deal of damage. My Iberian swords are unloading some javelins on the approaching enemy infantry, and then I'm just going to kite back. Notice I have my main infantry line further back. This would have been a good opportunity for my opponent to strike at me with his cavalry, but he left them too far away for support and missed an opportunity here to really cause me some damage. He's using his archers to try and pick at other high-value targets, I think, because he's worried that he's losing the skirmish fight. So he's trying to cause some damage with his Cretan archers before they die. But yeah, so my opponent's having a hard time engaging me too, because I'm making it difficult for his cavalry to get within range. Baited a javelin volley out of me there. Bad for me, and then he turns right back around to come in for more. Here, he's going to go ahead and take the charge, and that's fine. I'm going to hammer these guys with javelins. At least I thought I was. I got a few javelins thrown. He absolutely should have charged right through here and should have gotten in my slingers. Again, mistake on the part of my my enemy. I would have tried to pull back, of course, and throw more javelins at his cav, but he definitely could have potentially gotten at my slingers. His Cretan archers are now pretty much dead. Both units have been rendered mostly combat ineffective, and I'm not letting him fire anymore at my general. And then I've changed my target, of course, and his Mercenary Scutari cav has taken horrendous damage. He's got his Mercenary Campanian cav and a couple of Libyan hoplites way back here. Got these hoplite units kind of way out on the flanks too. My opponent is approaching a little bit disorganized here. I do like what he's been doing though, trying to push back against my slingers. He needs to do this, and again, he's going to have the opportunity. He could have, I think he had a move order or a charge order. Anyway, he goes ahead and tries to pull on through to my slingers, but there's too much damage that's been done to his Scutari cav at this point, and I'm going to be able to easily save my slingers from this by just moving my infantry up. Now, unfortunately, that Mercenary Scutari cav is interrupting some of my infantry from getting good charges. Here, though, I get a nice charge on some Mercenary Samnites and interrupt the charge of his Libyans, and I'm also going to get a nice charge there, but my opponent has an extra unit here. It's going to be dangerous for me. His Mercenary Noble Fighter gets kind of caught up in the center on some of my Iberian swords, and then I get a very nice counter charge with my Lusitani Noble General. The enemy skirmishers are dead, so my Lusitani Noble General is safe. My opponent's reinforcing troops were way too far away, so I come in for a quick rear charge. He's using Mercenary Iberians to hurl javelins at my Scutari cav. Excellent move on his part. But these rear charges, although they're not going to just straight up rout his men, they're going to cause a lot of damage and make this fight not go nearly as decently as it could for his men. He's a little slow to outflank me here too. Good maneuvering to get to the flank, but he just hasn't taken advantage of it yet. And he almost closes the vice on my cavalry there, but I managed to get away. His Mercenary Campanians do come in, and rather than going after some rear charges potentially, he comes to engage my Scutari cav, which is very fine with me. My guys have a nice bonus versus cavalry. They are, you know, just medium cav, and the Mercenary Campanians are going to do some damage to him, plus there's enemy infantry and stuff around. But it's a fight that I'm willing to let go on. I didn't actually kill any of them, though, to his credit. These guys do have good health and morale and armor and all that kind of stuff. He does split the center here with his general, which is a smart move. I didn't see this, and he also gets through with his Mercenary Campanian cav. I do get some Scutari cav free, though, and over here he's allowed this Libyan swordsman to get absolutely cut down without causing hardly any damage, though it does get some javelins off of my Balearic slingers there. So that was a mistake on his part. He started to engage me here, and I just started destroying that Libyan infantry with sling fire. And I've managed to still save a couple of my slingers, and then I just kept running away with this one to try and pull his mercenary companions away from the fight, but he smells the poop from me on that strategy and then turns around and uses these guys for what they're best at, a rear charge into low armor units. This is going to be a devastating charge against me, and his mercenary companions should have stayed in that combat. They would have done very well. You don't really have to go hit and run with these guys in that type of situation. They would have done extremely well versus my infantry there. But of course, I guess maybe with some of these veteran shields getting free, he wanted to pull out of that fight. He brings his guys back into the fight with more mercenary Scutari Cav, which is not what he wants. And now my mercenary Scutari Cav are going to get some very nice kills on his companions and be able to chase them if they run away. My Slinger's doing very nice work, again destroying this Libyan hoplite as it tries to come reinforce the Cav fight. So that's also bad. It's a very close fight though, all in all, because again, my opponent was able to get a little bit of outflanking on me, and he got a rear charge with those companions, but again, I think if he would have left the companions, it would have been dangerous. My general is now free, finished killing the mercenary noble fighter, so my opponent's expensive unit actually ended up getting killed by mine. And I'm of course going to be using the strategist general with my Lusitani noble to try and make it more effective in combat. Veteran shield warriors that are left, my opponent's skirmishers would have been key right now, but I was able to take out his skirmishers and I still have slingers left. His mercenary companion cav is falling, and my opponent's going to have no answer to my Balearic slingers, on top of the fact that his infantry is getting beaten down by veteran shield warriors, which are very nice. So yeah, my opponent taking a beating here. And then my general still alive, which is also going to really help me. If he would have killed my general, could have been very dangerous. Those mercenary companion cav charging in or something like that could have been very bad. His general now coming in for a rear charge, trying to break some of my troops desperately, but they will not break without the general being dead at this point. Not from a charge, just from a bodyguard. And then my Scutari cav pin it in place, and we're going to kill the Carthaginian general. Overall, still a fairly close fight. You can see here some of the weaknesses of the Lusitani. They are strong, but in this case, you know, Carthage has armor and stuff like that on its side that the Lusitani do not, and it can still make it sometimes a challenging fight for the Lusitani. Plus, I went skirmish heavy rather than sword heavy. A pretty sword heavy Carthage, or Lusitani would have beaten down Carthage really badly here, I think. But the skirmish heavy version of the Lusitani is also pretty fun. The Balearic slingers were getting nice kills. This one Iberian swordsman still got a ton of kills somehow. The rest of them not getting all that many, but just serving their purpose of throwing javelins at enemy cav and helping to protect my skirmishers in this case. Very nice kills on my veteran shield warriors, all except for one, of course. This one getting 201 kills. And the Lusitani guerrillas, of course, helping to fight on the flanks against Libyan hoplites, which they're actually inferior to. So there's a fight that I knew they were going to lose, but just to keep those Libyan hoplites from being useful somewhere else, I went ahead and engaged. And then, of course, my Scutari cav, a couple of them not doing so great, and one of them kind of doing alright. My Lusitani noble did fine in the end, 168 kills with most of its men left. Fun battle, a fun matchup actually, I think, between Lusitani and Carthage as well. It is actually pretty hard to use elephants versus the Lusitani because they have so many javelin arm units. But anyway, that's a little more about the Lusitani. They are a great sword faction. They are not up to par with the Boii. They're not going to be up to snuff with Tylus or some of the other power factions right now, but they are a fun faction. They're capable in the right hands. I would recommend maybe, if you're worried about getting skirmished to death, try using these guys on a forested map. It will slow down their charges a little, but it'll allow you to spam infantry and not really have to worry about enemy cavalry being as effective in the forest either, or skirmishers for that matter. So spamming a whole lot of Lusitani infantry in the forest can be pretty deadly. And you can use forest, of course, to cover your approach on maps where maybe not the whole map's forest, but there is some there. So that's kind of an idea on how to use them. But yeah, fun faction overall. Sword focus, so again, your builds are probably going to be focused around good sword infantry, but if you're really feeling sneaky, maybe doing kind of a Lusitani skirmish build can be pretty fun also. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Heir of Carthage, signing off for now.